Oh, let's break it to a true voice. Let's get going. Why are we waiting? Grab some donuts for the road. Okay.
And we're live.
All right, so I want to welcome everyone back to another edition of the Northern Nerdcast, where we showcase the geeky and nerdy people, groups, and events that happen in and around the city of Edmonton. The Northern Nerdcast is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. Please feel free to head on over to albertapodcastnetwork.com for a list of amazing Alberta-made podcasts. We would also like to encourage everyone out there that if you enjoy this episode, to share it with all your friends on social media. This way, we are able to help grow the community here in Edmonton and keep everyone up to date on the latest news and information regarding the geeky and nerdy people, groups, and events that happen in and around the city. Also, if you or someone you know would like to be featured on the show, please feel free to contact us over at northernnerdnetwork.com. Now, let's get on with the show. All right, so we are back in the Nerdcast studios. I feel so alive today. I tell you, this is a wonderful thing. I love this. This is so great.
From your very fancy digs at home, not from camp.
No, this is so good. All right, yes, like I said, we are back in the Nerdcast studios. We are joined by none other than our most amazing, most talented, most tremendous, incredible co-hostess ever. That's right, Chelsea Thompson. Hello.
It never gets old. That's why aside from our amazing listeners and viewers, the superlatives keep me coming back. Thanks, Dan.
That's right. We are also joined by Haley. Say hello.
Yay. That's me. Hey,
Yeah.
It's cute Thulu. Yay!
Thulu. And we got Shane joining us again. Hey, Mayo.
How's it going?
Returning guests.
Returning guests, both of you. Welcome back.
Hey, thanks.
We are so excited to have you guys back. We're going to be talking about End Game today. I'm kind of excited. So
what? Sorry, what movie?
Spoiler alert.
I haven't heard of this movie. What are you talking about?
Spoilers ahead. If you haven't seen it yet, don't watch this episode until you do, or listen to this episode until you do.
Yeah. Because you know what's interesting? If I can just jump in, one of the things that I found really exceptional about this movie, just to start, is that you can't really even talk about how you feel in a spoiler-free way. It's like, this was an adequate indie film. They dropped a couple bucks and everything's fine.
It was a good movie. It got some stuff that happened in it. And
now on to the stock market. We'll.
No, you're right. It doesn't even work like that. Because,
there's just so much that happens that goes on, and yes,
it makes you feel all the feelings.
It does. It really does.
Oh no, I must be an incredibly broken human being, because I'm just gonna come out and say it. I felt no feelings.
Well, numbness is a feeling, technically. When you're like so shocked by everything that you're seeing on the screen, you're like, well, that's overload.
That was the thing. Right, that was the thing that I saw.
Yeah. So yes, we are going to be talking about Endgame in the show today. So please, if you are watching and you are sensitive to spoilers, please don't come back later.
That's your final warning.
All right. So what am I doing here? Moving
right along.
Moving along. Just making sure doesn't seem like something's. There we go. Okay. Making sure everything's working. Everything is working. We are good.
Yay!
Yay!
All right. We're gonna start off real quick by kind of just going and introducing ourselves. Not just who we are, but how we've been. Because I like to catch up with everybody. So Chelsea, how are you been?
I've been all right. Yeah. Plugging along, trucking away. some days on set. I got to go out to Harrison for a day on set, which, if anybody's familiar with the Lower Mainland, is out past Abbotsford. And the big draw there is Harrison Hot Springs, but that neck of the woods of the Lower Mainland is lovely. And even on a rainy day, it was very beautiful. We were at a little in golf course resort bed and breakfast, sort of tucked away. And it was lovely. The set was lovely. So that was a really nice day. And yeah.
It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Haley? How have you been?
I have been pretty good. Things are, same kind of thing, chugging along. Haven't recorded an episode of Galaxy in God knows how long. But hey, this is going to be the kick in the ass I need to get back into it. Otherwise, I'm just, flowing around. I'm at Happy Harbor / Wonderland now, so come see me for all your comic book needs.
Yay!
How somewhat frustrating is that to say that all the time? Happy Harbor / Wonderland Comics.
Well, usually I at this point I don't normally bother with the Happy Harbor, but I'm like, oh, Wonderland Comics, like everyone's gonna be like, what's that? Like there's talk of maybe even just shortening it to Wonder Harbor. I don't know.
That's
Wonder
fun.
Harbor.
I just work there.
They just let me they just keep paying my wages here. And
Oh, not at all.
It works.
Just keep showing up, and they
Yeah,
just don't kick me out.
That's awesome. And yourself, Shane, how have you been?
I've
Been
been
a
pretty
while.
good. Yeah, it has been a while. Yeah, it's nice to see all of these faces again because I haven't seen you guys in a while. I've been getting older and fatter, and that's pretty much about it.
That's
I'm
what we all look forward to.
gonna take this moment to shame you as our GM.
Uh-oh.
When are we gonna play again, Shane?
I'll give you the nebulous default answer of soon?
of every
Sometime.
GM out there.
Yep, there will be a
Sometime-
day we will return.
Sometime
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not like I left it at a cliffhanger or anything. It's like the war party is approaching. There's no way the village will survive. You're all going to be overrun and scene. Everyone take 5. That's a dick move, man.
And that was what, 4 or 5 months ago?
Was it really 4 or 5 months ago now? I'm okay.
It was last year.
Consider me duly shamed. We'll get the ball rolling again soon.
It was mostly in jest. I had of all of us on this panel, we all completely understand how life eats your life.
Yeah.
So it was mostly in jest, but I mean, I really like the game that we're playing. So partly for realsies.
That's fair. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'll get her going again soon. I promise.
Hooray!
Really.
Sometime soon.
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 How about you, Dan? How have you been?
I've been all right. I've been working a lot. I've been up north for most of the time. It's kind of nice to be back home for a little bit.
But yeah, you're home podcasting from home.
Wearing my
Chewbacca sweater.
my Chewbacca sweater for the night.
Oh my God.
Sorry, it probably didn't sound very good, but that was my best one. That's all.
It wasn't in the realm of Chewbacca impressions that exist out there. Wasn't too bad because there are a lot of them that exist out there that are
So that's
sad.
a thing that exists. And shame on you.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yours,
Damn
you
it.
know, right in the middle. Not bad.
Just
Certainly not
adequate.
the
Just totally adequate.
middling.
Certainly.
Certainly
shouldn't be talked about.
Certainly not the worst one that I've heard. Yeah.
Aw.
That's high praise.
High praise.
Not the worst. All right. That wasn't the bar I was trying to set, but sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, my dreams and hopes haven't been crushed for all of this entire show now.
Also, FYI, unrelated to that, the game is going to be another 6
Yes.
months.
That's what I get for being a jerk face.
Fantastic. All right, let's keep moving on. We're gonna talk, like I said, we're gonna talk Endgame on the show today. So before we do, we're gonna take a quick little break, and we will get right back. Chelsea, you're up first.
All right. I have some fun things to tell you guys about the Edmonton Public Library's podcast. So it is called Overdue Fines, presented by the Edmonton Public Library, hosted by Bryce Crittenden and Caroline Land. They discuss movies, music, books, and pretty much any sort of popular culture and media that you can think of, and likely some that you haven't. You'll learn more about what you can find at the library, and it comes out every 2 weeks. If you're interested in checking it out, you can find it at epl.ca/podcast, and that is the Overdue Fines podcast.
All right, so we are back, and we are talking about Endgame tonight. We're also going to be talking a little bit about some of the MCU as well, just as a whole. We did a show was it when did we do that show with you? Was that before the last Avengers movie? Shane?
I think it was just
Or just
after
after.
Infinity War,
Yeah,
right?
it would have been
After
we did.
Infinity War. Yeah.
We all jumped on together with Steven and we did that 10-year thing, right?
Yeah.
That's the one you're talking about?
The
Yeah.
rundown of all of them.
Yeah.
Now, there's been a couple movies since then. Was Black Panther afterwards?
No, Black Panther
No.
was before.
No, it was
the only thing that we
before?
got afterwards was
It's just
Captain Marvel.
That's it.
Yeah.
Or Ant-Man and Wasp.
No, Ant-Man and Wasp, I think, was like just before
Just before.
we had recorded, because I don't think Shane had seen it yet.
I don't think I had seen it yet either.
But it was also very, very close to the
Mhm.
release date chronologically to Infinity War, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
on that note, something that I don't know if you guys have picked this up yet, but it's very, very cool. You know the opening scene where Tony is tapping the helmet and he's like, it's been day 22. That's an actual counting reference to how many movies they've done
Huh.
to set up to where they are, right? Which is
Huh.
kind of cool. There's so many.
There's so many little Easter eggs.
Tiny little. Yeah.
This movie, I swear to goodness, and I'm going to try not to swear because it really, every time I think about sections of this movie, I kind of lose track of my thoughts and I start to curse more. And I'm going to think carefully about not doing that. But when I think about this movie, after investing 11 years of, if you're a fan, if you've invested the 11 years into watching all of these movies to get to this point, this movie rewards you in every scene with a beat or a nod or an egg or something to see like, thank you for being with us for 11 years. And not only does it do that, but it kicks you in the feels like real good. Like, look at this scene. Look at what's going on in the background. Look at this nod here to this. Like, every little thing pays off in my mind in spades. It's awesome.
Tell us how you really feel about the movie, Shane.
I'm
See, I'm
trying to leave out all the explicit language, right? So it's just like, so, and then, but and it was good.
I feel like because there are moments in that movie where it really, really hits you.
Yeah.
Like I'm sorry, I'm still I'm a huge sucker every time I see Stan Lee in the movie now. That hits me every single time, no matter what's happening. But aside from all that, there are moments that really do pay off in the movie.
Yeah. So
I
many.
find that there's a lot of moments that just really fall flat for myself as well.
Really?
Yes. There's
See-
a lot especially in the middle of the movie. It just kind of like they were just putting stuff in. I don't know if it was just for padding or what the reasoning was behind it all. I just
See,
I don't know.
and I'm very interested to hear your guys' thoughts on that now, because for me, what I found was that even though the movie ran at 3 hours, there was not one moment, and I specifically kind of planned my theater going experience to not have like a full bladder, so I didn't have to worry about, how you could start to feel anxious when you're like, oh, when do I get up to pee, right? Like,
Yeah, when's
Yeah.
it safe?
yeah, like I don't want to miss
Is there going to be
anything.
a safe
Right?
moment? Yeah.
So I didn't drink anything before going in, and even though the movie ran at 3 hours, for me, I never
It
felt
didn't
once like,
feel like 3 hours.
no,
to
I
me
felt like,
anyway. Yeah.
holy shit, is the ride over? Like, what is going on? Like,
See now
why are
you
we
guys
done
are
now? Why now?
you guys are saying this, and I'm like, did I see the same movie?
Yeah, no. See, and
Really?
I'm
Okay.
gonna follow with Haley on a couple things. I know for sure, because here's the thing. Like, let's just go. We're gonna start this off right here. By talking a little bit about the introduction of Captain Marvel in this
Okay.
movie. Now
Yeah.
that was, to me, just a whole lot of posturing, and then she goes away.
Yep.
Right? Like, let's bring in Captain Marvel. Here she is. Not really a good introduction to her character into this Avengers group.
Yep.
Thor does his little hammer thing for no reason. She doesn't know Thor from nothing.
Yep.
Doesn't know anything about the hammer. Nothing. Like, why even put that there? Again, it just there's things that it just seemed like a lot of posturing. It's meant to, again, try to get those things like, oh, let's just do this because it's cool.
Yep.
But it's not. It wasn't a good introduction to her or her character, and it didn't really bring her into this fold of Avengers. And then she just leaves. Yes, I know her. I know she's probably filming a lot of Captain Marvel during the filming of this movie, so she couldn't be there for a lot of it. But at the same time, I would have liked to see more inclusion of her in this movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think to talk about like the first 15 minutes of the movie for me. So we get all of the Tony in space.
Yeah.
They kind of fake out like, oh, Tony dies in the spaceship. And it's like, wait, did they seriously just kill Tony in the first 15 minutes of the movie? And of course, that's a fake out. Then we have the introduction to Captain Marvel. And like, as soon as she is there, like, they're like, okay, let's go fuck up Thanos. Oops, sorry, I swore. I'm not going to be like, I'm gonna freely let the explicitives flow. So I'll make up for it for Shane if that's okay. And then like, yeah, in the 15 minutes, like Thor comes in with Stormbreaker and like just decapitates Thanos. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, that's really like, this is really how they're going to play this movie.
Yeah.
And then like, of course, in the back of my head, I'm like, oh yeah, there's going to be time travel. And I'm like, oh boy, super excited for superhero movie time travel because that always works well. But like, and I have to say that moment when Thor comes in and he's just like, no, like, I'm so over Thanos, and just decapitate him. Like, that to me was really the only shocking part of the movie. Like, was in that first 15 minutes. I'm like, oh my, like, they just killed the main villain in the first 15 minutes. How is this gonna go from here? And then it was just kind of like, for me.
And then not so much that like that whole thing with him cutting off of Thanos' head, but the whole premise of the time travel and how they presented it in this movie, then they totally went, by the time they got to the end, totally went and just screwed up that whole notion of which way they were trying to say, oh, if we take the time, like if we take all these crystals out of time and then put them back, then it should be fine.
No.
But we will kill the villain in the past. Like,
that's not how it works.
That's not how it works. Like, you can't bring this villain that you've killed killed later. You can't kill him twice.
No.
So the way they presented the future and the way they presented time traveling didn't work, and it was kind of upsetting.
I have
Can I counter?
Yes.
Okay. So to start off right where you picked up, Haley. So for Thor, we have to kind of get in his head a little bit, because one of the things that, because after Endgame played out, now I was going like balls deep into spoiler territory in Reddit, just reading all kinds of nonsense about what's going on. And so we have to think about what Thor's gone through at this point, right? So Thor has lost every single family member, Asgard, and half of the remaining refugee Asgardians.
Right.
Then he missed the mark. He failed utterly and completely. Thanos wins at the end of Infinity War, and it's his fault. He was the one, the only person that could have stopped Thanos, and he missed. So for a guy that's been alive for 1,500 plus years at this point, who's essentially the single best fighter, and at this point, the only possible savior, he dropped the ball, like big time. And not only dropped the ball.
Sorry, I want to make a counterpoint really quick.
Okay.
Yes, in Infinity War, we do see, Thor is the one who, in the last arc of the movie, misses and doesn't end Thanos. But we all know Peter Quill is really to blame for why Thanos won. Like,
you wouldn't have known about that.
No,
they
exactly.
weren't on Titan together, right?
Thor wouldn't have known. But we as an audience know, right? And I'm just like, I don't think it's fair to blame. I, as an audience member, don't think it's fair to blame Thor for that. I get nobody on Earth knew that, but like anytime someone's like, "Oh, it's all Thor's fault," I'm like, it's not.
But we're not blaming him. He's blaming himself.
He's blaming himself, and I get that.
Kind to himself.
I also get that, but at the same time, Thor managed to do a fairly devastating blow to anybody else. And he would have not, who on the earth would have known that a hit to the chest, like direct hit to the chest, would have not killed him. Right?
Yeah.
And any other bad guy he would have ever killed in his entire life, that would have killed him.
Well, it was part of it. He was being vengeful, right? Like he wanted to look him in the face. He wanted to say, you wanted to spit those words in his face, right? He's like, I told you I would kill you. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that was his, like he wanted to get up in his face. That was his error. And he realized his error when he lost, right? So then all those things happen and Captain Marvel shows up, and you're right. She's used as a blip. And we see more in the trailers coming up to the movie about Captain Marvel and how important she is in this meetup. Like we don't even see the scene where the pager shuts off and she's like, "Where's Fury?" Right? Like that's only in the trailer, right? So when we're watching the movie, she shows up and she's just like the cocky, sort of brash, military-minded Superwoman, right? Like but at this point, though, in her career, she's earned it. She's not only been a successful fighter pilot, she's not only a captain in the U.S. Air Force, but she's also been in space for 25 years fighting the Kree-Skrull War and knows what she can do. So, when she's ready to go fight Thanos, that's her thing. It's like, let's go kick his ass.
And I feel like because we are fans, Marvel played certain plot and story points the way that they did, knowing that the audience will have seen Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And she didn't need more of an introduction because we'd all just seen Captain Marvel and that was her introduction.
Yeah.
And I feel like Thor's bit with his hammer is, it was posturing, but again, we go back to the mental state that he's in, right? He's just screwed up royally. He's trying to prove that he's still, got stuff and is a good judge of character. And if someone's going to come along and say that they're top dog, well, he's going to toss a little test at them. And so he pulls the axe to see how she reacts, and we know she's a badass, so of course she doesn't flinch, and that's that's all he has to, that's all he has to see. There's nothing more to say other than I like this one, right?
Yeah. And then off they go.
So even though it's brief, right? And I feel like there were a lot of, as much as it can be a bit on the nose, they were very good with their, one-liners to sum up plot, right? Like, the universe is a really big place, and I've been away doing other things because not all planets have you guys. And so I'm going to go back to doing that because not all planets have you guys. But if you need help, know that I am here and I will come. And because we've all just seen Captain Marvel, we know that that's true.
Yeah.
Right? And so for me, even though, sure, I get that it seemed abrupt, I understood it and it didn't really bother me.
Yes, and that's the thing. Like we have all watched the movies, right? Like, and that's the thing. But if you are just here to watch Endgame as a movie, it would have not worked.
Yeah.
Is what I'm like. If I'm going there to watch Endgame as just a movie to watch, it doesn't work within the context of the movie itself.
That's true even if you haven't even seen Infinity War, though.
Yeah.
That we're not even talking like all 10 years prior. We're just like even just the prequel to this.
Yes.
Doesn't make any sense. Like, why are these fuckers all sad? Like, what's going on? He's got superpowers. The guy's a billionaire. He's got a flying suit. He can shrink. That dude's big and green. What the F is going on? And they're all sad?
So that actually, everyone being said, I kind of want to segue into a point because also because we're talking about Thor. And I think one thing that really, again, I'm just gonna say it. I didn't enjoy Endgame as much as I enjoyed Infinity War.
Infinity War was amazing.
I enjoyed Endgame more than I enjoyed Thor Ragnarok. I didn't appreciate my friend making fun of me for 1 out of 10ing Endgame because I'm not 1 out of 10ing Endgame, but I had issues with it. And I think my biggest issue was the portrayal of Thor after the 5-year time skip. Everyone else is, and someone said this to me, well, everyone else is getting their shit together. Why isn't Thor? And it's like, because to me, what Thor is doing, he's withdrawn. He's become a hermit. He's become a drunk. He is internalizing his trauma and his PTSD in a way that honestly is more human than anybody else in the movie has portrayed it, right? Like we do see Cap leading a quote unquote survivors group. That's cool, but not really kind of the same thing. Whereas Thor's portrayal of how he handles his PTSD, and because he let himself go and get fat, it's played as a joke through the whole movie. And that really bothered me because I know people who do suffer from PTSD. And from, the whole audience is laughing, haha, Thor's fat, haha, they made a big Lebowski joke. And it's like, this isn't funny. It really stifled the movie for me because I couldn't get over how unfunny I found it. Like, this dude, like Shane said, as people who have seen the Thor movies, he has literally lost everything. Like, there is, for Thor at this point too, he's given up hope. Whereas everyone else is like, oh, we're gonna go, we've got hope, we're gonna do something. And yeah, Thor's arc really bothered me. At the end of the movie, we start to see, he's pushing past it. He gets his hammer back. He has Stormbreaker. Once he, does kind of the Viking transformation, we start to see that Thor again. But throughout the whole movie, I was just really unimpressed and just like, Thor is sad. And this is a realistic exploration and portrayal of someone who has fallen into a depressed state. And yeah, I just think, I think the Russos made a mistake in making it a joke.
See, here's the thing. When I watched that, I didn't think of it as a joke. I thought that they were trying. I thought that they were trying to tell a story for Thor's sake about those exact same points, but at no point in time did I think that they were trying to spin it as funny. So
See-
I agree with you for all
See-
those same points, but I didn't take it as funny. I'm like, I don't think they're trying to be funny here. They're trying to tell us how serious this is from Thor's perspective.
Yeah.
Right?
And so for me, so yes, jokes were made by other characters in the movie at Thor's expense.
Exactly.
But I don't think it was to make Thor's overall general state a joke.
Yeah.
For me, I got Thor's journey that you're pointing out, and I'm really, really glad that they had a character, and specifically one as powerful as Thor, react that way to what had happened. I also found that, I mean, so there was the Lebowski joke, and there was only one or two others tossed, and in the grand scheme of like how over the top some of the other, there was, what was it, War Machine's comment about him being made of cheese whiz. Those are sort of the two that pop out off the top of my head, right? And for me, it was more telling that like those characters were tossing those jokes, which is something people do when they're uncomfortable, seeing someone that they know and love who is so strong in a state like that. They have no other coping mechanism with it than to try and make a joke out of it because it's so very not funny. It's
very polarizing for a lot of people when they see somebody like when Thor, you see someone who's so fit and so all together. And Thor is one of those characters where you see the arc of Thor's character throughout all the other movies. He is the strong one, right? He is the fit one. He is the guy that people will look up to as being the tough guy. And to see him that way, that would make anybody uncomfortable with that situation. Because seeing Thor kind of let it go would be hard for people. And using a little bit of humor and their characters who did use it, that's sort of within their character.
Yeah, so to me, yes, jokes were made at his expense, but it wasn't to make his state a joke of. To me, it gave it another layer of that humanity, of like that uncomfortableness, of like, I literally don't know what to say to you or can't do anything to help you right now, so I'm just going to make an uncomfortable, awkward joke about it, which was a whole other layer of this like human struggle. For me, it added that for me. Because I absolutely saw the same thing that you saw in Thor's struggle, and I'm so effing glad that they put that in there, because I think it was really important to have the flip side of what devastation can do to people.
Yeah.
You know what else is very interesting about kind of tying up that scene? You know the support group that you mentioned, Haley, where Cap's sort of leading the talk?
Yeah.
There were two people in that, and not everyone necessarily noticed it, but one of them was one of the Russos. And he was the one that was talking, and he was openly gay, and that was sort of apparently that character was the first openly gay character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which was very, very interesting. Also interesting, and I don't know if they gave him a speaking part in that circle, was Jim Starlin, who's credited for creating Thanos.
I did not know that second bit. I knew the first bit, though.
About Joe Russo?
Yeah.
Yeah. But after this scene, and kind of moving on, because I mean, there's a lot to unpack with Thor, like the fact that he gets Mjolnir back and stuff like that. So I mean, because obviously there's so much more in this movie, and we could talk about Thor almost for the whole 3 hours that the movie ran, right? But there was a lot of other,
so much of a focal point throughout the whole movie. I do sort of wish
all of the characters got a focal point arc, and it feels like we're just talking about Thor, and rightly so. But Nebula had an arc, Tony had an arc, War Machine had an arc, Rocket had an arc, Black Widow had an arc, Hawkeye had an arc. Every character got something to explain where they were, Like even Rat Boy, which was 114 million whatever version where he just stumbled over the switch and saved the whole universe, right? But there was every character had such incredible development. Like when I think back to the scene before Captain Marvel shows up and rescues Tony and Nebula in space, he's teaching her the flick football thing, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he's just like, we're gonna do this or whatever. He's like, oh no, you don't have to swipe at it like that. The whole point is to just stay, and I have to succeed by, and he's teaching her, right? And then she wins and she kind of flinches and he's like, no, congratulations, right? That whole thing, remember, Nebula always loses to Gamora. She's been in no winning fights. So her reaction, Karen Gilliam's reaction, which shows how she doesn't know how to process winning. And then she's unwittingly, and this is really amazing because in the comic book, as some of you guys might remember, Nebula in the comic book ends up being the obvious traitor because Thanos kind of twists her into an abomination of life and unlife as a mockery to death because now he's got the Infinity Gauntlet. He's the most powerful being in the universe. So he's literally mocking the woman that he used to love by creating Nebula, but she's got just enough sentience left that when she sees the opportunity to steal the gauntlet, she does and restores herself, and she's ultimately the bad guy for a moment, yada, yada, yada. In this case, and I don't even feel like they did a bad job explaining it because I saw a lot of people complaining about this online. But the fact that 2023 Nebula and 2012 Nebula could talk because of quantum entanglement in the computers in her head unwittingly was brilliant. So she unwittingly becomes the traitor and she hates it. She hates that she's betraying her friends. Cannot stand it. And she can't even stop herself. Right? Like she's stuck all of a sudden on this runaway train. And that's just yet another very interesting development for one more of these characters in this movie,
That's just it, right? And here's what I'm gonna go. Again, I did like the movie. Yeah, I did. There were parts, like I said earlier, that really didn't go so well, and especially during, I said, sort of in the middle here. But yes, Nebula had a fantastic arc throughout the whole movie. I really liked. So we're gonna go back. I'm gonna go back with Captain America because we did kind of touch on him for a second there.
Yeah.
Oh,
What a fantastic arc he had.
Because that was America's ass.
Yeah.
That is America's ass. What a fantastic way to bring him through this whole movie. Now,
yeah,
there were two people I think in this entire movie here that they were kind of just we're done, right? We're done with the MCU. We're done with this. So they brought their arc. Yeah, Tony and Cap. They brought their arc all the way through to the very end, and what a way to just end. Like Captain America. I'm just going to start with Captain America here.
Yeah.
What a way to end with Captain America. I really did love watching and seeing how Cap was finally worthy of Modular.
Yeah, that was such a hype moment.
The audience that I was in when that happened literally cheered and applauded out loud.
Yeah.
How could you not? Like, honestly,
Yeah.
What a phenomenal moment in time to be watching that movie, because after watching these movies and seeing how everything has sort of unfolded over the last so many shows that we've been watching, and seeing Captain America finally be able to be immortal, be worthy of Modular. What a fantastic time. And then on top of it, having the arc of him going back in time and finally living out his dream life.
Yeah.
So this is the thing we talked earlier about, it's time travel and a superhero movie, and there's all kinds of like plot holes around time travel and returning everything. And I love the ending, and it makes me so happy that they finally gave Cap time with Peggy.
Yeah.
As a fan and a romantic, it makes my little heart beat.
Right.
So I'm very glad that Cap got that ending, which makes me very tolerant of like, there's no way that you can make a time travel movie like ever and cover all of the holes and cover all of the like, that's just the nature of time travel. So it makes me very tolerant of like any of the time travel gaffes or bubbles or holes that might pop up throughout the whole movie, because at the end of the day, they're trying to tell a story for us fans, and I think they did that successfully. So I will forgive them the quantum physics of time travel.
And we have Aaron's in our chat tonight, and he did say
Hey, Aaron.
and he did say on in here that we have to remember that Captain America almost did pick up the Thor's hammer in
previously, which
in
is why
Age of
it was
Ultron,
so
right?
great.
And
that
so
he-
to be able to finally complete that moment, what a payoff.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, even just having that whole thing at the very end with him becoming old and being able to pass the torch.
Well-
What are you guys' thoughts on that as well?
Well, there was just, I mean, this movie in general was so full of so many great, like, full circle moments and bookends and nods back to the several other movies. But I mean, back to the very, very first movie, I mean, Cap had the line to Tony about, you got to be the guy who makes the sacrifice play. Right. And so at the end of the first Avengers movie, Tony lives up to that and flies the nuke up into the portal. But we see that callback again. He's the guy who makes the sacrifice play, right? He puts on the gauntlet and snaps his fingers. And it's just sort of this, from the first Avengers through to this one, this beautiful bookend of the development of Tony's character, how he presents the front of this super self-absorbed, self-involved, self-obsessed dude. But at his core, he's really not. He's the guy who makes the sacrifice play and jumps on the ground.
I am Iron Man.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a good arc, and I mean, to your point, because I mean, we see him at the beginning, and obviously he's rescued, and he's spent time with Nebula, and he's kind of, I don't want to say humanizing her, but he's treating her as someone that is sharing in his loss. He gets off the ship, and he immediately talks with Cap, and he's grateful to see Cap, and then moments later, because I mean, he tells him, he's like, I lost the kid. And we know who he's talking about. He's talking about
Spider-Man.
Peter, right?
Yeah.
And then he gets mad at him because, and they had this conversation in, again, harkening back to Age of Ultron, right? He's like, we'll fight and we'll do this together. And he's like, you weren't there. You weren't there. And this is, like this whole thing, this promise that you made to me that didn't happen. And then he tears off his, his housing for his nanotechnology for his suit. And he shoves it in his hand. He's like, that's it. Put this on and hope that you survive, because that's it. I'm out, right? And he basically quits, which is great because at his point, he's, barely survived. He's starving to death. He's malnourished. He's lost. Right? I mean, he doesn't even know at this point, getting off the ship, who's all back. I mean, he's like, holy shit, right till this moment, I thought you were a Build-A-Bear. Right? So even though they're delivering these really, really important, heartfelt kind of beats with these characters as you'd expect them to interact in this high tension moment, they still drop a tiny nugget of the fun-loving part of Tony's personality that can't help and will never be snuffed out.
Yeah, that will always crack wise.
Right?
I mean, that was another thing in general that I appreciated. After the like utter obliteration at the end of Infinity War, I appreciated how actively they tried to inject levity into this movie and how actually quite funny it was steadily throughout. That everybody got some good zingers and one-liners and wisecracking and whatnot. And I feel like that was like compensatory. It was like, sorry guys, we know we hurt your feelings with the last one. So here, let's try and make it a little bit better.
See, and I don't know if I agree, because I think for me too is after Guardians, like, and I'm always going to talk about Guardians when it comes to the type of topic, because to me, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 is the most approachable superhero movie. No one knew, like, casual comic fans probably didn't know who the Guardians were. Like,
No.
My parents are in their 50s now. They didn't know who the Guardians were. My mom doesn't like superhero movies. She loved Guardians. And Guardians owes to that these characters that aren't Marvel's big characters, and it was funny. But I think that the downfall of the Marvel movies was how funny Guardians is, along with the competition of how dark and gritty DC has been, is that Marvel now needs to feel that they have to over-inject that humor into everything, which is part of the reason why I didn't like Thor Ragnarok. And I'm always going to bring that up too, because it was just... Now, one thing I want to do actually is I actually recently saw a clip of Thor Ragnarok, but dubbed in Japanese. So I'm willing to give it another try in another language, because I actually enjoyed the clip I saw. But I think there were moments...
How does Korg sound in Japanese? That must be awesome.
I didn't see Korg. It was just mostly Thor and Loki clips. But I think in Endgame, there were times where the humor was super effective. I was like, oh, that worked. Anything with Professor Hulk, when he tried to be funny, I did not like. I didn't like Professor Hulk at all. Like, the CG was making me really uncomfortable to look at. And I just didn't like, I get it. It's supposed to be, it's Hulk Banner having made their peace. It didn't work for me. I did not like it. And again, I think that's really where I find the pitfalls of everything after Guardians for Marvel, is that they had a successful funny superhero movie, and now everything has to have a little too much humor, or a little too much humor that feels forced at certain times.
I don't know. When I see Hulk walking through the streets going, smash.
See,
this is gratuitous.
that was one of the scenes actually where I thought Professor Hulk and the humor was most effective. Like, I actually thought that really worked. I've opened the chat. I can see Aaron saying the Hulk and Ant-Man scene was cringe-inducing. It was. Like, super relevant scene, because that's exactly how, like, I imagine a group of teenagers who meet their favorite celebrity and their friend would act. But that whole scene, I was just like, this is going for way too long, right? Like, just way too long.
I don't know.
So, yeah,
To me, that was whole indicative of our society. I think that was just kind of a shot in the dark at like at how far we've come, or just kind of like this is our society now.
For me, the cringiness around the humor of Professor Hulk, for me, I found like it was done on purpose, or at least I felt that it worked to be that cringy. Because
Banner's awkward.
That's Banner. He's just a really like cringy, weird, awkward, nerdy dude.
Yeah, but at least when he's Banner, he's like easy on the eyes.
See, and we're like for that whole scene. I think it's one of those things
Banner
where
Hulk does look weird. I will give that to you. It looks weird, but again, to me, that adds to the cringiness.
And I think that when
you're
you're going into a movie like this, and here's when we're watching that scene, I really do believe when the director is making that scene, he's going, I want people to feel uncomfortable. I really want to make the audience I want all the emotions, right? When I go to a movie, I want to feel scared. I want to feel things, right? I want to feel like this is funny, or this is good. I also don't want you to skip out on those cringeworthy moments of like don't hold back, because like, yeah, okay, I'm starting to feel it now, but no, just push it and really let that set in. And I kind of appreciated when they did that, because I like that scene. Yes, it was cringy because it was awkward and it was weird, but that's sort of what I liked about it. Like, that was really showcasing that character in a way that we haven't seen, because we haven't seen the character that way. We haven't seen them smashed together.
On the topic of not seeing the character, again, Marvel, fantastic marketing for this movie. I think of all the trailers, like we saw Tony in the spaceship, but not once after that did we see any other Tony, which is again why in that first 15 minutes I was like, oh my God, did they already kill Tony? We never saw Hulk in any of those commercials. Nope. So it was a shock and it was a surprise. And again, Marvel's marketing for these movies has been phenomenal, just kind of tying it into, having never seen the character before.
And not giving anything away.
Exactly.
Like, they kept a lot of cards to their chest, even with who survived. I mean, I remember having that list of that came out just before the movie came out, and everyone was like, "Oh, they've revealed the list of who actually lived and who died." And I mean, we all kind of had a fairly good idea of who was still around, but to have the confirmation even then is a big deal, because Marvel doesn't let things out. Like, they did a phenomenal job of keeping things relatively spoiler free. Yes, there was rumors, but for the most part, we didn't hear a whole lot, or we didn't see a lot. And especially in their marketing, we didn't see nothing of what we actually got when we watched the movie.
Exactly. Yeah, I had a point.
Sorry,
no, that's okay. I was going to dive into some of the time travel stuff. Because now I'm thinking more about the time travel stuff.
I have a hard time with time travel stuff. Like, I love time travel in Star Trek when they do it right, but I really have a hard time when they don't do it right. And I believe in this movie they didn't do it right, and so that's the part of the movie I'm like, I just want to.
Yeah. So
I get why you did it, and I understand the point. And yes, it was a good plot device, but I don't like the way they messed with the timeline. They messed with their own timeline. They made branching paths when they weren't supposed to. It's all, this whole thing is over.
So first, one thing I will say, after saying that like Professor Hulk was weird and that I didn't like him, out of all of the time travel stuff, I did actually kind of like his interaction with, I can't remember her name.
The Ancient One?
The Ancient One, thank you.
Yeah.
I liked his interaction with her because of all the time travel bits that were happening. That's the one that made the most sense. Like, when she was like, when Banner was like, oh, maybe Strange made a mistake, and she was like, or maybe I did, right? She's a little bit more cognitive than everything else that's happening around them with the time travel. That part I liked. And the time travel was kind of broken into, obviously there were 3 teams or 4 teams? 4 teams.
4.
4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So team 2, Cap, Banner, Scott, and
Tony.
So this is the time travel bit that I have take the most issue with. This is something I discussed with somebody else. First off, they let Loki get away with the Tesseract.
Yes.
Nobody says anything about that. Obviously, and this has been pointed out to me by someone else, that's setting up the Disney Plus show. Like, there's nothing else they could be doing with that. We know that Loki is getting a Disney Plus show. That's why it's not mentioned. Then, oh no, Loki got the Tesseract. But how? Like, and then
again,
oh no,
messing with the timeline.
Yep. Oh no, we screwed up. What do we do? Oh, we just go backwards in time, where these 2 items just conveniently happen to, like, the extra.
We didn't think of this before.
Yeah, the Pym particles and the Tesseract happen to be in the same place. It's like, wow, that sure is convenient, guys. Like, that's not like, I just really like what, like, oh no, this is dumb. And then,
I mean, that was the reason for the jump. But the reason for the jump was Tony's arc.
Tony's arc,
And,
yes.
and this is why I talked about earlier. Yes, there are all kinds of terrible time travel holes in this movie, all of them. But
All
I
of them.
forgive them because they exist for character-driven plot advancement. And oh my, pardon me, Dan, but I'm going to join the swearing train. Oh my fucking God. The scene between Tony and his dad.
Yeah.
And John Slattery just is a great Howard Stark. That whole scene was just...
How awkward was Tony? How awkward is Tony when he's
time
like...
travel holes be damned. I will swallow all kinds of time travel holes for that kind of character and plot
those kind of
advancement
feels, yeah.
any day of the week. Yeah.
I like to see, and here's the thing, like aside from the time travel holes, yes, the arcs inside those moments, like those moments where you get to see, Tony's father and Tony, meet and talk and have that nice bonding time. Like those are amazing moments that we get because now time travel exists in the MCU.
Right.
I loved it. I can't like, I know why they did it, right? I get why they did it. I have a hard time with.
I like what you guys
did it.
I like that you guys have all talked about these time travel bits because you're all right. But I want to point out something else about the time travel thing. And it kind of goes back to Haley's point when she started off about when Banner finally gets to meet the Ancient One. And this is back in 2012. And she's wielding the Eye of Agamotto. So she's wearing the time stone, right? And it explains so very clearly, like we've established, and this even goes back to the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? The TV show where their characters, Fitz and Simmons, talk about time travel. And they talk about how it simply doesn't work. It does not work because all the events are linear and they cannot change. So going to the past doesn't change anything because the events that led you up to taking that jump back were the same events that led you to taking that jump back, which means you were destined to do it, which means this was all predestined anyway, which was the whole point. And what they did very, very beautifully and simply in that exchange between Banner and the Ancient One was she goes, no, it's not going to work. You've created a divergent timeline. You may think that you're fixing these things, but instead it's just an offshoot. It's fixed here, but over here. And she shows the dark arc. It's all wrecked. And he's like, okay, but Banner, being the physicist and the scientist, he goes, well, what if we just put it back exactly where it was supposed to be so that we don't create a divergent timeline? She's like, well, okay. She acquiesces. It's like, kind of, but
in theory,
but it still doesn't mean I can give you the time stone because that's we just don't give it up. I mean, that's when the whole reveal, like they have that heated exchange, and he's like, but why did he give it up? And she's like, oh my God, like maybe I made a mistake, right? And the whole thing is kind of the what's kind of cool about when I walked out, I thought there's 4 paradoxes and they're not explained. Like the Loki Tesseract thing, the fact that Nebula kills herself, the fact that Thanos is stripped out of his timeline and brought into 2023, where he's killed before he can form the gauntlet and snap, thereby eliminating all those people. All those things are forks that were allowing them to do those actions, whereby putting the gems back to where they belong and then allowing them to be destroyed by Thanos in the future, because they still get destroyed by Thanos when he's on his garden world, retired, and he kills them, like he destroys the stones, and Thor and the rest of the Avengers still come to kill him. So the whole point is that they weren't undoing everything. They were only undoing the threads that they created to fix those eras and then put them all back, right? So really all they were doing was undoing the snap only, but in 2023, which was still 5 years after. So in a way, they were just putting all those people back after, and the only way they could do it was to reconstitute a gauntlet from the past.
Right.
Which, on that point, someone pointed this out on Reddit. You guys remember how Tony snaps the gauntlet at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you think back to every single movie where Tony's had an injury and he's always like rubbing his arm or whatever, it's always the same arm. So the time shockwave, and people have said it's coincidence, but honestly, if you think about all the times that Marvel has put in an Easter egg with such depth, you're like, there's no way they could have known. Yeah, Kevin Feige knew. 2008. This is what's going down. We're building an Infinity Gauntlet. Start rubbing your arm. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's fan speculation, and no one's come forward to say yes, this is true. But how do you, in probabilities only, always get the same arm in every movie all the way through?
Yeah.
Right. So it's in my mind, even though my first reaction was to agree with you guys complicitly, like, this is shitty time travel. Like, look at these paradoxes. It's like they're not even trying to give a fuck. Like, what is going on here?
And that's the thing.
Like,
So they put them all back and they chop off the divergent branches. But then the very last, like I said, then they just drive a truck through that theory, giving Cap his happily ever after, which again is another one that I will gladly swallow.
But that's the same thing with Cap. He came back to them when he said when Professor Hulk sent him away with Mjolnir and all the stones to send him back. He came back the 5 seconds later, but he lived his whole life with Peggy because he was in a divergent timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So then he comes back and he's old Steve, and he's lived his life, right? And at that point, he's like 110 years old or some nonsense, right? Fun thing to think about, because he had to return all of those items, including Mjolnir. At one point in time, he was in Asgard, jamming the Aether back into Jane Foster.
Okay,
ma'am, I'm sorry to bug you, but I just have to insert this into you. Man, that doesn't work at all. Like,
I don't know.
So
he has
really sorry about this.
He has America's ass.
Right?
I don't know.
Right?
Maybe he shook it for Jane Foster and she liked what she saw.
She's like, all right, for the country, sure.
Okay, so I have another time travel thing. So when we get that awesome shot at the end, towards the end of the movie, towards the climax, everyone's coming out of the portals. My sweet, sweet boy, Peter Parker, comes running out of his portal, and he's so excited to see Tony. Okay, so like I said, not a super big fan of the movie. Didn't really feel a whole lot of emotions. I will 100% admit, as soon as Peter Parker came out of that portal, I'm like, it's my boy! Like, just tearing up because I love Tom Holland as Peter Parker so much.
He's
and like
an amazing Peter Parker.
And that's the moment I was waiting for this whole movie. After, like, I'm gonna get back to my point, but after reflecting on Endgame very seriously, I have realized that my enjoyment of a Marvel movie directly correlates to how much screen time Spider-Man has. So he comes out of the portal and like he doesn't miss a beat. Like, oh my God, Tony, like, you know, he was only gone, like, to them, it only felt like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they didn't miss anything. Like, they have not been gone for 5 years. They've been gone for 5 minutes, wherever they've been. So thinking about Spider-Man Far From Home coming out this summer, which I'm very excited about, one of two things would have had to have happened. All of his high school class would have need to have been poofed, which, you know, when you do the statistics on this movie is not impossible, because when you have a family of 4 and 3 people get poofed, that's not how stats work when you're poofing 50 people. Because we see that, obviously, the world outside of those who've been poofed has continued for 5 years, right?
But they were also on a bus that had a driver that could have been poofed. That could have.
True. So the whole
Right?
bus could
That whole bus could have died. That whole bus could have not poofed, but died because of the result of the poofed driver.
True. There.
On a
true.
bridge.
So on a bridge.
Just saying,
point
they were
is-
on a bridge in a bus that had a driver that probably would have got poofed. Just that he had a 50-50 chance. Anyways, continue.
So it just got me thinking again, because I'm always thinking of Spider-Man. Just like how is like it creates an inconsistency in the MCU, which there are tons of, but it's just like, again, all of these people would have had to have been poofed, or they can't be in Far From Home, because if time on for the people who weren't poofed, which means, you know, Ned and MJ, like they would have to graduate, like unless they just stopped going to school for 5 years, which doesn't really seem, you know, plausible, because, you know, there's still business and commerce and just lots of people now, right? So, you know, in that very emotional moment towards the end of the movie, I'm like, well, how is Far From Home gonna work?
Yeah, and it's like you said, it's either the simple answer where they all got snapped away and were gone, right? Or the more complicated answer, which a buddy of mine, well, Steve, he was on the show with us when I did my 100th episode on my show, right? But he and I were talking about it. He goes, well, think about this. If this event were real, they wouldn't be going back to school. The people that survived, they wouldn't be going back to school. Businesses wouldn't be open, and things wouldn't be back to normal the next day.
No.
Probably not the next week.
Well,
probably not the next month.
and as the long shots showed us, 5 years later, things still aren't back to normal.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right?
So the point would be, if the remaining people of Earth said, okay, we really, all of us, everyone's taken a year. Who's missing? Let's start tallying some names. Because when Scott comes back after being away, like there's those monuments, and there's hundreds of them, right? And he's only in the United States.
Only in San Francisco.
Right. So we don't know what's going on in the rest of the world, because we don't. I guess in a way they probably didn't have the time to cram that in, and well, rightfully so. I mean, it was already a dark-toned movie, right? But
to Haley's point, though, even if they had stopped going to school, they still would have aged.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And in real world shooting constraints, they show up and they look the same, creating the idea or illusion that they haven't aged those 5 years, which leaves the only option that they must have also been poofed.
Yep, I agree. I'm just saying it's theoretically possible that they could just be in different grades, but still be in the same school. Like now they're only 3 or 4 years older, right?
Yeah.
Well, 5 years older, but you know, they're only 2 or 3 grades ahead. So Peter comes back and he's still a sophomore, and Flash and MJ and the people that, you know, like all those other guys, they're all graduating. So, but Peter's smart, so he goes on the tour with them for Far From Home, and then that's it. Like, I don't know, but either way,
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah,
we're all gonna go.
We're gonna go out. I can almost guarantee you, it's just gonna be like, oh yeah, nothing happened, or they'll mention it. They'll mention it, but they won't explain the reason why they're still in the position that they're still in.
One more thing I'll mention.
Again, it is their time travel crap that they're pulling in this movie. I just didn't like.
Time travel crap. So one more thing for the end of the movie, again, with that whole big story scene, when they hand off the gauntlet to, you know, when Peter has gauntlet and he hands it off to Captain Marvel, and you have all of the female,
the women's lineup.
That is the Peter Parker protection posse. I would like to claim my place as the rightful leader of that protection posse. Because, like, fantastic moment, just because you've got all the women in the MCU right there. It is beautifully shot. Is it a little gratuitous? I mean, a little bit. You know, we're trying. You know, with the 6 episodes under.
But after how many years and how many? but after how many years and how many movies of
Exactly.
male-led superheroes, right?
Exactly.
Is showing the lineup of all these powerful women really gratuitous, or is it people just saying
Earned.
it's gratuitous?
Here's
Earned.
And
Totally
here's
earned.
the second part I really love about that scene is Peter Parker is just sitting there and you can see he's just like the hard eyes emoji, and I'm like, again, like my soft spot for Tom Holland as Peter Parker is just like, see, I liked that last 15 to 20 minutes of the movie because Peter Parker was there. I was like, this is the for now.
So here's what I'm going to just interject for 2 seconds. That whole moment with the women all together it was nice to see. My problem that I have with that one is that I wish I would have seen the women leading and not in a posse. I would have wanted them to have a crew behind them, right? Leading the charge. I would have liked to see that instead of the whole let's get together girl power thing. You know what I'm saying? Because I think if you were going to do the moment where you are really going to uplift women in a movie, which is what I'd love to see in this movie, I don't think they hit it. I think they did it because they wanted to show that they are female power for once. And, instead of...
Interjection really quick.
They've skipped out on Scarlett Johansson for all these years as Black Widow, right? And now they're making up for it. But I think if they would have had it a moment where they had, what's her name from Wakanda there?
Okoye?
Yeah, Okoye. I would have loved to see her bringing in her troops, right?
Yeah.
Really, really making that moment of
have the Dora Milaje just cut through a bunch of them. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. And to your point as well, Dan, is how disrespectful was this movie to Spice? We go to the end of the movie. We get a Tony send off. We get Tony's funeral. We know Scarlett Johansson's going to be back for a Black Widow solo. Obviously going to be a prequel now with the events of End Game. But the only I think we see a little bit of Bruce kind of mourning. We definitely see Clint mourn. Clint, that's his name?
Yeah.
Clint? Yeah. We see him mourning Nat in the moment, but then it's kind of like Nat's gone. Nat's gone.
We don't have a funeral for Nat. Like,
and Tony's funeral is a private funeral. Like, with this, like, why not just you lost Nat, you lost Tony. Like, I would even with the Guardian being there, like, yeah, we got 2012. But I don't know if she got poofed with Thanos' troops or if she just made an off-screen escape. I would say even Gamora would have, been deserving of some sort of memorial besides Quill losing his mind in Infinity War, right? Like, so it was really cool to have that moment of all of the women there, but at the same time, please respect Nat. She's one of the original 6. Her send off, and especially because Cap gets a happy ending. Tony doesn't necessarily get a happy ending, but his arc ends in such a way that is a good ending, right? Like, if this were a video game, Tony's hit all the points to get the good end.
Yes. So, and that's what I'm trying to get at, right? Like, here's the chance where you get to, yes, there was one moment in this entire movie that you give to the women, right? They could have done way more. They could have given proper funerals, send-offs to the fallen. Like, they could have done that. Yes, I get that Tony was like sort of the beginning of this whole thing. But at the same time, what Black Widow had done for the MCU and for all these movies, for her to just kind of like Twitter off into the end and only have that one moment with Clint kind of was, I felt like it was like, yeah, we're trying, but it's almost not enough.
See, for me, I felt it was kind of fitting to the character.
She was Solo.
So, yeah, at her core, at her heart, like she and Clint were never really, they never had superpowers. They never, like, she was a spy. She was Black Ops. She was Solo. She was under the radar, right? And again, it's another one of those full circle ones back to, earlier Avengers.
But she
She's
was
got-
so important to
she's got-
every
she's
one
got-
of those characters in that
Sorry,
area.
I'm just gonna
right?
finish because I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
One of those full circle moments, right? She's got red in her ledger and she needs to wipe it out. Going back to the sacrifice play, right? Like,
Mhm.
this is her, right? She's going to balance out. She's going to pay her debts and she's good with that, right? So, I mean, the second they got there, I knew that Clint was going to try and be the guy, but I knew it was going to be Nat. I knew that's where we were losing her. And I felt like that was kind of the perfect capper to her character. And I feel like before that happened, the tribute came to her the way they set up her character in the 5 years previous. Like, if we're talking about female leadership, right? She's the last one of them with hope, the last one of them running the Avengers base, the last one of them keeping contacts and tabs and trying to do the best that she can. She's the leader of the group, and it's set up that way. It's introduced her right off the top of the movie that way as the de facto leader of everybody who's left, which I really appreciated.
And at the same time, still kind of broken because she's still got her ballet slippers with her, right?
Yeah.
When she's eating the
Mhm.
PB&J, right?
Yeah.
So,
But that's what I'm saying, right? Like, at that moment, like, we have her as the leader of the Avengers for a time. She's super important to a lot of those, like, to the heart and soul of that team. She's super important to a lot of people. And for her to get a moment with just kind of like Banner going, "Where's Nat?" Right? Like, where she didn't come back, and him being heartbroken about it. But then it just kind of that falls off, right? That, yes, I like, she did, like, I love the way she ended. I love that. That was amazing. I think that it was perfect to her character, and I like how that fight between those two were like,
to cap it off.
Yeah.
was incredible. But I would have loved to see them
Just one more moment.
just
after
one
the
more
fact.
moment at the end, right? I would have loved to see that. And I would have also loved to see, like, just even with Gamora, right? Like, I would have loved to see that too.
Well, that's probably what As Guardians of the Galaxy is going to be about now, right? Because now that we're getting James Gunn back and Thor is clearly joining the Guardians, right? That they're probably going to go chase down Gamora.
On the topic of As Guardians of the Galaxy, I would just like to say that in the current comic run, Thor is actually Throg, which is Thor, but a frog. And I'm really sad that we're not going to have a frog in the Guardians. But
Is
I
it-
think of, like,
Sorry, I
ahead.
just want to quickly, because we're running really late. But I do want to. Is there any other characters in this movie that we kind of missed that we should probably?
Yes.
I'm
And
glad they tossed.
absolutely.
I'm glad they
Yeah,
tossed.
well, I know, but I'm trying to, like.
I'm
is there-
glad we got to see a bit of rescue. I'm glad they tossed a little bit of pepper in. That was a really nice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I like how they brought those, like, the characters that we haven't seen for a while, back into, like, Jane, like, bringing her back in for a little bit.
And
Frigga,
Yeah.
right? I really
Again,
love
speaking of
seeing those
scenes
characters.
between parents and children, the scene between Thor and Frigga.
that was amazing.
God
And how
damn it.
and how amazing was Pepper in the suit?
Yeah,
Awesome.
the rescue suit was great. And what else? Who else? Oh, so speaking of Tony's funeral, they pan through everybody. The one thing that I actually had to look up, the boy who was there,
Ty?
kind of standing by himself,
Yeah.
was the boy who helped Tony with his suit in Iron Man 3.
Yeah. Ty?
Yeah. That's good.
Kind of cool.
I
We
like that
really
they brought those characters back, right? Like they brought every.
I love that Happy
They
made
had-
an appearance.
They had
I love
that
Happy.
where they
The
brought
friggin' line with his daughter about cheeseburgers from,
Oh, yeah.
from the first Iron Man when he gets back and all he wants is a cheeseburger. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
One main character we didn't actually talk about was actually Hawkeye Ronin. But his story tied in really nicely with Nat's. I feel like, you know, we understand why he becomes Ronin. His motive, I felt his motivation a little, you know, a little weak. I'm gonna go kill criminals because they survived and my family didn't. I get it. That's a classic vengeance tale. But overall, I really liked haircut. I will say that. I did think that haircut really worked well. But overall, yeah, his story was so integrated with Nat's that I think, again, it does make it really sad that we didn't get that last little tribute to Nat at the end. And I think that, I think that is all I want to say about that. And that kind of wraps up the main 6.
Mm-hmm.
All right, real quick, where do you see the MCU go from here?
Who do you wanna
Infinite
go first?
Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, we've got Spider-Mans, we've got Black Panthers, we've got
We've got
Do you think we're gonna
Namor.
get
I just
Do you think we're
gotta
gonna get another Captain America movie?
well,
With,
I gotta ask what you guys. So presumptive Captain America was Bucky, but then they gave it to Sam.
Yeah.
How does
Yeah.
everybody feel about that?
I love that. I thought it was
it made me
such a good
so
handoff.
happy.
I'm a Winter Soldier fan though, right? And I was kind of heartbroken. I did appreciate him getting the shield because I mean he was in the movies he seemed more closer to Tony as he was older, right? But at the same time, I don't know, or not Tony, but to Cap.
Yeah.
So I see where they went with that.
Well, to me, the moment that they shared when Cap pulls out the shield and gives it to Sam, and Sam looks to Bucky.
Yes.
I feel like that was an amazing moment because it's like, no, this should be yours. And the nod that Bucky gives back to him makes me feel like Bucky and Cap had this conversation about
like,
Didn't he say something to him on the platform,
I don't want
I'm gonna miss you.
and Bucky was like, yeah, no, it should be Sam's.
Yeah.
I can see that happening. I think like I love Bucky, and I kind of want to see more of him because I love his character.
Well, you are.
Um,
They're doing a Sam and the Winter Soldier on Disney Plus.
are
Nice.
they? So
Yeah,
they're
Falcon and
gonna be
Winter Soldier.
teamed up together.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I'm okay with that. I'd like to
Yeah.
see more of them. I want to see more Winter Soldier.
So where I think we're going with the Marvel Universe, we're not done seeing Avengers movies. We're just not going to see Robert Downey Jr. necessarily as a major player, but I don't think he's gone. There's absolutely no reason why he can't be the next Jarvis in the suit, right? Because we've got an opportunity to use Pepper. We've got an opportunity to use Ty, as we could call him Iron Lad. We've got all kinds of reasons that he might stick around and just be like a sentient computer voice, whatever. But we were teased with the Easter egg that there was an underground or under ocean earthquake. Well, who is that other than Namor?
Mm-hmm.
Right? They didn't name it, but it's probably that because they've never not given us something that meant something.
They
later
always
on.
drop something right through the movie, right?
Exactly. So Namor is probably the next big villain of the MCU, maybe, because
In the next Black
Aquaman
Panther,
did really well, right?
Because it was in the next. What do you figure for the next Black Panther? Because it was Okoye who was talking about that, right?
Exactly. So, and it would make sense. You want a kingdom versus a kingdom. Otherwise, who's a foil for T'Challa, right? It's Namor and Doctor Doom. That's it. No one else. Those are the two people that you can use. And we haven't been introduced to Doctor Doom yet. But they can bring Doctor Doom in now that they've got all the Fox properties. But first they have to say, who's the next techno guy on the scene? Holy shit. And then they introduce him in Doctor Strange. Who's the next mage on the scene? And he's kicking ass all over the place. Holy shit. And then who's the next blah, blah, blah on the scene? It's like, well, is it the same fucking guy? Like, what's going on here? Like,
Because we've got, in terms of titles, we've got more. So there'll be more Doctor Strange. There'll be more Ant-Man and Wasp. There'll be more Black Panther. There'll be more Spider-Man. There'll be more
Captain Marvel,
Captain Marvel.
Mhm.
There'll be
more Guardians.
Guardians.
Yep.
There'll be
Will there be more Thor? Do you think?
Hard to say.
I'm gonna put
There's
Possibly.
not. There's
well, Thor will
Is-
live.
no,
Thor will
so-
live with the
So
Guardians
did he sort of pass off his torch anyways to
to Valkyrie.
Valkyrie?
Yeah.
kind of sort of, but they could still use Chris Evans' character in Guardians. And the reason
Guardians,
why it's easy to say that is because the whole point of the thing is that Robert Downey Jr. has allowed his contract to expire, but that doesn't mean that he can't get a new one. Chris Evans wanted to do other things like direct. So that's why he doesn't want to be doing Cap. But that doesn't mean he's out, because we can always do a period piece, 1950, 19 whatever. Somehow young Cap that lived his life with Peggy Carter can be like, hey, listen, we know you're hiding, but we kind of need you. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be Captain America, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. undercover, right? Then we can also get, with all that, we've got all the ladies. Like, I need a Femme Avengers or something like that. Like, bring me the ladies of avenging, right? Like,
Well, and
I
there's
want-
still, I mean, there's got to be space for Scarlet Witch isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Right?
She,
So I think-
we're getting one on Disney Plus called WandaVision, which
Yeah. Cute.
so far the best information I've been able to figure out is that somehow it's a period piece in the 1950s, and Vision is there. But who knows?
Fun.
So
Yeah.
I think where I see, like, Marvel is going in this next phase is going in two directions. We're gonna have our earthly Avengers, and we're gonna have, I'm just gonna stick with the name as Guardians of the Galaxy because I think it's a really catchy title and there is a comic tie-in. And with the Guardians and Thor and Captain Marvel, right? All
Space.
they're all space. So we're gonna have two separate but like with the whole MCU, this now cosmic Marvel and earthly Marvel universes are going to be tied up together but still separate. Right now they're running Cosmic Ghost Rider destroys Marvel history, so maybe we'll get more time travel shenanigans. Maybe we'll see. And like, one really sad thing, because another team up I really like is Spider-Man and the X-Men. Is unfortunately they've come out and said that the X-Men are not in the 5-year plan for the MCU, which is really upsetting because I would really like to see the X-Men come back. I am a wee tiny 90s child, so I watched 90s Spider-Man. I watched 90s X-Men, which, by the way, those two theme songs are like identical. We were listening to them the other day at work and we are like, these are the same. Exactly. So I would really like to see the X-Men come back. Again, with those Fox properties, like, yeah, I want to see something, it's exciting because there's a lot of opportunities for Marvel and Disney, who is the ultimate puppet master here, to start introducing lesser characters, less known characters.
Well, that's another Squirrel Girl is coming. Squirrel Girl is coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, so I don't know. I like
There's so much that they can do, and they're going to, and I really hope that they, like, I'm very excited to see where they go from here.
Yep.
I mean, we've had how many years now of this MCU, right? It's kind of nice that they kind of wrapped it up, and I think they did a fantastic job of really hitting those points throughout this movie, and really. And doing all those callbacks right to the very beginning of Iron Man, and really bringing that into this movie was a fantastic, and I think they did a phenomenal job. Yes, you're not going to always hit every little point, and yes, a lot of it was kind of mismatched and put into just to move the plot forward. But overall, I think what they did as a whole, and this is kind of my final thoughts on this, is that we finally got a movie that tied up the last, how many years did we say this?
11.
11 years of the MCU. They did a fantastic job of just tying up all those loose ends and then still making it open enough for them to continue on, in a different way, but at the same time, kind of closing off what they started with.
Mhm.
Well, and in this grand arena where
Anything can happen.
well, you certainly most assuredly will not please everyone.
Not for a lack of trying, though.
I think they made a conscious, concerted effort to do as right by the fans as they could.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I have put together my final thoughts. I'm going to make a really inappropriate analogy, so I apologize. And Infinity War and Endgame are like sex. Infinity War was the climax. Endgame is the time you cuddle after. The first 2.5 hours for me is the time I spend, thinking maybe I shouldn't have done this, but then I really enjoy that last half hour.
Oh, why is there so much regret?
You're like, oh, should I have done that? But this is really comfortable.
This is really nice.
I really like this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. No, I'm okay. I'm in for this. Yeah, this is good.
Huh.
Shane, yourself? How can you follow that one?
Well, I could only pick it more inappropriately, but I'm not going to because this is a family-friendly show.
We've already-
the explicit tag is going on. It's done. I
Yeah.
can't help it now. This is
done.
it.
So, honestly, I agree with Chelsea's point and Haley's point, and really, this was the ultimate send-off for these characters, not just for them, but for us. It's a love letter from Marvel to the actors and to us, mostly to us, for paying for these movies for 11 years, right? But like a true nod to such dedicated fans, because honestly, you truly get some really, really, I don't want to say Marvel fans are the best fans. I want to say nerds are the best fans, because really when we like our stuff, we like it a lot. And we also hate it when it goes wrong for some of the same reasons. And that's not necessarily the good part of our clique, but it kind of happens, right? So this was every beat, and this is kind of what I said at the top, every beat of this show was designed to hit you in the feels, to thank you for being there for the 11 years, to say, I know you watched this, here's your reward. I know you watched this and you felt that at that time, here's your reward. And then at the end, when they did the credits and they did the send-off of the signatures into the Starfield, like, you can tell that the Russos also love Star Trek, which is why they kind of copied that whole time travel shtick and the whole Star Trek 6, this is the last time we're getting the original cast and no one else. And they sent the signatures off into the void to like thank them. It's like, we're finalizing this chapter. We're not done. We're absolutely not done after this, because these piles of money allow us to build more stuff for you. Right? But we're done with these characters, and now we're on to the next story, right? So in terms of, and this kind of harkens back to, I'm going to go all the way back to 2008, because Terry and I just finished watching all of the movies except for Captain Marvel to set us up to watch this over the course of a month or so, maybe 2 months. But the takeaway for me is that even the movies that I didn't think that I liked that much when I originally watched them, like Iron Man 2 and 3 and Thor: The Dark World.
The Dark World.
Yeah. On rewatch, especially after having watched Endgame, the whole arc is magnificent. It is absolutely magnificent. Because I remember thinking, I'm enjoying this movie more than the last time I watched it. And I was thinking specifically about Iron Man 2 and Mickey
Mickey Rourke.
Rourke, yeah,
Yeah.
doing the worst
Russian accent.
That it's like, what is my birds? What is my birds? This is a good bird. Hey, you want this good? This is a great bird. This is a great bird. Sam Rockwell being beautiful, and I go back to those and I think, wow, I can't imagine a point in my life now at 45 where when I sit down to watch these again in, I don't know, a year, to watch the whole lineup, because I'll finally own Captain Marvel and I'll own Captain Marvel and Endgame. I can't imagine a point where I'm not going to be grateful and grateful and just be able to enjoy what has taken 45 years of my life to be able to see in this format. Because I've seen it for 30 years on the printed page, so I know these stories are good. But to see them with these actors, right? That to me is the treasure right there. That's the swan song, the reward for fandom, is that they clearly love this material as much as we do, and I think it shows.
Awesome. All right. I'm gonna have to. We're gonna call it. This is fantastic. I think you guys were amazing. Awesome. Like I said, movie was a great movie. If you haven't gone seen it, why are you watching this? I'm sorry, we just destroyed that movie for you. Anyways, I'm gonna do a quick ad read for people. I'm gonna inject this when you listen to this episode. We're gonna hear this somewhere in between everything. You never know. Because I should have had this in somewhere else. Because I wasn't planning on it being so long. But that's what
happens
it is.
when dedicated nerds get together to dissect a 3-hour-long epic movie.
Yeah,
we
end
end
up
up talking because you're calling it, because we ain't done.
I know,
because
we're not done talking about it. That's the thing, right? We can literally go on for another 2 hours, 3 hours of talking about this one movie and the MCU and everything else that's going on. But we have to stop at some point. So I do love your guys' opinions. I think this was absolutely fantastic. And so thank you guys so much.
Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the invite. It was nice to be brought onto a podcast or a video cast. It's really cool. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. So this episode of the Nerdcast is brought to you by the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. And if you guys head on over to albertapodcastnetwork.com, you guys will find the list of amazing Alberta-made podcasts. And right now, we just added 2 more podcasts to our ever-growing family of podcasts. So I would like to draw your guys' attention to one podcast that we've been talking about. It's been an affiliated podcast, but now has moved into the realm of partnered podcasts. And that's Let's Do Coffee. We've been talking about that one on our show, and now it's just part of the network. So you guys can go and check that one out. It's presented by the Nate's Maji Center. And so that's an awesome podcast to go check out. And one more podcast that we just added, and this is one I'm really excited about because summer is coming up. And what better way to do summer than barbecue? Right? Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a podcast, and it's called Eat More Barbecue. That's right. And so, I mean, that just says it everything right there. So go check these new podcasts out. And that's all on our podcast network, the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATV. And that is albertapodcastnetwork.com. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching and or listening to this edition of the Nerdcast. Can't stop this. Later. I'm gonna do that again.
I want to toss a sidebar out there for a second. I always love when you do the Alberta Podcast Network ad, Dan, because secretly in my head I'm counting how many times can Dad say the word podcast in this ad.
Podcast.
Right?
All right. I want to thank everyone out there for watching and or listening to this edition of the Nerdcast. The Nerdcast is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. Please feel free to head on over to albertapodcastnetwork.com for a list of amazing Alberta-made podcasts. The Northern Nerdcast is produced by myself, along with Chelsea Thompson and Trina Schessel. And if you'd like to find out more information about the Northern Nerd Network, you can check us out on our Twitter at northern_nerd, or on facebook.com/northern nerd, or youtube.com/northern nerd network, or on our very own website, northernnerdnetwork.com. That's all the time we have. I want to thank everyone out there for watching and or listening to this edition of the Nerdcast. And I'll see you guys on the next one.
Bye.
Love you. Bye-bye. That wrap up at the end there where we're all dancing to the music, I feel like it's very Muppets.